Welcome to Amir Shakil 5858, the War and Love Report. I am Amir Goodnam. In Maui, as disaster recovery efforts ramp up across Maui, so too has the painstaking search operations. That confirmed death toll now stands at 106 people. But with most of the victims still unidentified, families and friends of the missing one are left fearing the worst. It's been 1 week since the first fires tore through Maui, turning vibrant communities like Lehana into Scotch ghost towns. Days after evacuating, residents are gradually returning to survey the damage and rebuild their homes and their lives from the ground up. One Lehana resident says that he is not the only one who lost everything, but it's everybody. He said everything is gone. Officials say 2 regions of the island are still ablaze. As of Tuesday night, the Lehana fire on Maui's western coast is 85% contained, and the upcountry Kula fire only 75% contained. In Lehana, search teams aided by cadaver dogs have been recovering human remains from destroyed buildings and burned cars. So far, crews have scored some 32% of the search area, and they are racing against the clock. Weather forecaster says a high windstorm this weekend could hamper their efforts. Today, FEMA Administrator Criswell spoke from the White House. She said, given the condition and the need for additional resources, they will have at least 40 canine search teams on the island, in addition to hundreds of search and rescue personnel, with more on the way. As coroners begin the process of identifying the dead, officials have called on family members to help, urging relatives of the missing to submit DNA samples. Authorities have started to notify the victims' next to kin. Among the deceased are 79-year-old Buddy Jantok, 68-year-old Franklin Trezos, and 60-year-old Carol Hatley, all longtime residents of Lahaina. The wildfires were propelled by high winds from a distant hurricane. What caused them is still under investigation. A resident says freaking power line just went down. As the fires tore through the island, Maui resident Shane Troy recorded smoke billowing outside his house after a utility pole snapped. Shane said he looked outside, there was a power line right there. And shortly after, the thing was just arcing away on the ground, landed right in dry grass. So sparks, and then there was a fire. The state's primary energy provider, Hawaiian Electric, now facing multiple lawsuits, alleging the utility company kept power on despite high wind warnings. Meantime, President Biden says he will travel to Maui on Monday to survey the damage firsthand. Historic landmarks, art, and artifacts have been destroyed. The cultural loss has been significant, especially for Hawaiians who have generation ties to Maui. Nehani here has been helping with recovery efforts in Lahaina. She is an activist and co-founder of Mauna Medic Healers, Hawaii. When Jeff Bennett of PBS NewsHour asked her, what has the last week been like for you, your friends, and your family? She replied that it was so difficult because we had this incredible devastation. Our beloved Lehana town is now a graveyard with over 100 dead that we know of, and potentially hundreds more. There are still over 1,000 people missing. So it's the incredible grief and shock and trauma. But at the same time, there has been this enormous uprising of community support and community care and grassroots organizing to get supplies and medical care and take care of basic needs of people who have been stuck in Lehana since the fires. So her team has deployed out there and has been taking care of people. But the entire community is wrapping its arms around each other and loving each other up and taking care of one another. So there is this incredible beauty at the same time as this incredibly deep pain. And it's a lot to carry right now. To be honest, Maui has for decades been a magnet for tourists. But for people who live there, especially native Hawaiians, it's been a home with a rich history. Ukraine resumed operation of ports along the Danube River today after a night of Russian drone strikes. The Danube flows through the southern edge of the Odisha region and borders Romania, a NATO member. Photos showed extensive damage to port infrastructure. The strikes mainly targeted grain silos and warehouses. The attack come week after Russia ended its participation in a deal that allowed the export of Ukrainian grain. In Libya, officials say 55 people were killed during intense militia clashes in Tripoli. Fighting started Monday when a senior commander was allegedly detained by a rival faction, then released late yesterday. Battles between militia members emptied the streets. It was the deadliest fighting in the capital in years after nearly a decade of civil war. A powerful explosion in the Dominican Republic has now claimed the lives of 25 people. Some 60 others were injured. The blast went off Monday at a bakery in San Cristobal. Firefighters are still working to extinguish the flames. The country's president vowed to get to the bottom of what happened. He said an investigation will be carried out to determine the origin and causes of this terrible accident. In the meantime, he said that it's up to them to save the lives of those who have been affected, and we will do so without any limit of resources to save every human life we can. Local authorities are investigating claims from residents that the building housed a factory that was operating illegally. There is a word tonight that U.S. Secretary of State Tony Blinken spoke by phone today with Dominican President. The American citizen has been wrongfully detained in Russia for more than 4 years. CNN was first to report the story and said Blinken assured Whelan the U.S. was working hard to bring him home, quote, as soon as possible. That is the second time that two have spoken. A U.S. appeals court in New Orleans ruled today that access to the abortion pill mifepristone should have some restrictions. The decision would outlaw telemedicine prescriptions and sending the drug by mail. Access to the pill won't change for now. The U.S. Supreme Court issued an order in April to keep it available while litigation continues. The Justice Department said it, quote, strongly disagree with today's decision and will seek the Supreme Court review. A prosecutor in Kansas says police should return items seized during a raid on a local newspaper last week. Law enforcement stormed the office of the Marion County Record after claims that one of its staff members obtained information illegally. The attorney said there is not enough evidence to link the alleged crime with the seized items or with that newsroom. Today marks the one-year anniversary of President Biden signing the Inflation Reduction Act. The sweeping legislation includes measures to address climate change, lower the cost of prescription drugs, and create jobs, among other things. At a White House ceremony today, the president touted what he sees as the law's impact. At a White House ceremony today, the president touted what he sees as the law's impact. President Biden said that this law is one of the biggest drivers of jobs and economic growth this country has ever seen. He said, "We are investing in all of America, in the heartland and coast to coast." He said, quote, "The friend said, look, you are investing more in red state than in the blue states. Well, I made a commitment. This is all about of America." Unquote. The president said the law will significantly cut U.S. carbon emissions and has already created 170,000 clean energy jobs. Excuse me. A former fundraiser for Republican Congressman George Santos has been charged with wire fraud and identity theft. Sam Mile is accused of scheming to defraud donors and raise money for Santos' campaign by impersonating a high-ranking aide to House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Malley pleaded not guilty to the charges today in a Brooklyn federal court. On Wall Street, stocks gave up more ground today on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 180 points. The Nasdaq fell 156 points. The S&P 500 shed 33 points. A stunning news is Maui's emergency chief had no disaster experience. Why does that matter? Because his department that's responsible for setting off the warning sirens for the first time. For the first time after disaster, Lahaina Road is now open, allowing residents to see what's left. 40 cadaver dogs are working there. White House spokesperson says that President Biden and his First Lady will travel to the Maui on Monday to survey the devastation and meet with first responders and survivors. A tropical storm Hillary is forming in the Pacific, Southern California. Let's hear Chris Warren from Weather Channel.
Storm Hillary, yes, forming this afternoon in the Pacific with winds around 40 miles an hour. It is expected to become a Category 3 hurricane by this weekend. Los Angeles is in the cone, but the big threat here, as the storm does weaken, it will bring a lot of moisture and very heavy rain. Could lead to some serious problems, including flooding. Also keeping an eye on the Gulf of Mexico for early next week and possible development as a big heat dome expands over the U.S. and Nora. It looks like, once again, record heat possible with temperatures well into the triple digits.
Chris Warren, thank you. Tonight there are new developments.
A new development in former President Donald Trump's indictment in Georgia. The Fulton County District Attorney is proposing Trump and his 18 other co-defendants be arraigned the week of September 5th. Let's hear what Nicolean Killian of CBS tells about this.
Prosecutors want the trial to begin.
District Attorney Fani Willis has proposed a March 4th trial date in her racketeering case against former President Trump and his co-defendants. creating a possible calendar crunch that's one day before Super Tuesday and weeks before Trump is set to go on trial in Manhattan, all sandwiched between two potential special counsel trials in January and May.
They're trying to step in my way at every bad.
CBS News has learned the former president could surrender next week. Co-defendant Rudy Giuliani is also expected to turn himself in.
I'll figure day next week, try to work out the conditions of bail, because there has to be bail. I imagine.
All 19 defendants are expected to be processed at the Fulton County Jail.
Doesn't matter, your status. We got a mugshot ready for it.
Trump has slammed the charges and claims he has irrefutable evidence of voter fraud in Georgia, something his former vice president rebuked.
The Georgia election was not stolen, and I had no right to overturn the election on January 6th.
Trump's ex-chief of staff, Mark Meadows, is seeking to move his case out of Fulton County to federal court, a strategy the former president may also pursue.
I think it's near certain he will try to follow suit. I think as part of his overall delaying strategy.
A new poll finds 74% of Republicans would back Trump next year, but 53% of Americans would not.
They targeted him all the way, and it hasn't been fair, but I think it's time for something new.
Tonight, a nonpartisan group called Advanced Democracy warns that violent threats are being directed at grand jurors after Trump's latest indictment. It found they were doxxed with their names, addresses, and photos leaked online.
The real-life family from the movie The Blind Side is speaking out after claims that they took advantage of former NFL player Michael Orr and then profited off his name. Let's hear a report by Umar Villafranco of CBS about this.
48 hours ago, the bomb dropped on their clients.
On Monday, Michael Orr filed a lawsuit accusing Sean and Leanne Toohey of tricking him into signing what he thought were adoption papers. It was instead a conservatorship agreement. The lawsuit claims the Tooheys used the conservatorship to profit from stories about Orr's life, including the Oscar-nominated film The Blind Side, which grossed over $300 million.
We want to know if he would like to become part of this family.
Today, lawyers for the Tooheys said Orr was well aware of the conservatorship.
He wrote a book in 2011. He acknowledged in that book on 3 separate occasions that there was, in fact, a conservatorship.
In the past, Orr has criticized the movie. I think the biggest for me is, being betrayed, not being able to read or write. Orr wants a full accounting of the profits during the conservatorship. The Tooheys say this is all just a shakedown.
Today, nearly 100,000 students in Kentucky's largest school districts were forced to stay home because of a crisis with the school bus systems. There is a shortage of bus drivers. A new bus route plan used computer algorithms that didn't factor in enough time between stops, causing delays, no-shows, and parents with no idea of their kids' whereabouts. A parent said it was horrible because she had no idea where the district had to reduce and merge routes due to a driver's shortage. After a report on migrant crisis by Gate Reyes of NBC News.
Tonight, a new battle is brewing over how New York City is handling the record-breaking influx of migrants. Mayor Eric Adams pushing back after the state's governor, Kathy Hochul, a fellow Democrat, accused him of not doing enough.
If our observation is that here's some things that you can do differently, we're all in. One thing no one is stating that we didn't do, house 100,000 people, unlike any of the
Comes after a lawyer for the governor today sent a scathing letter saying the city faces a serious crisis and has failed to accept the state's offer of assistance and should do more to act in a proactive manner. The mayor opening 2 new shelters, and he's repeatedly slammed the federal government for not doing enough to help the city. Today, we spoke with Carla from Ecuador with her 4-year-old daughter outside the iconic Roosevelt Hotel in Manhattan, which is returning to a migrant housing facility. Give us an opportunity, she says. Many of us just want to work. Across the country, other major cities are also struggling with the influx, and Massachusetts governor just declared a state of emergency.
It's unsustainable.
In New York, since last year, more than 100,000 asylum seekers have arrived. More than 58,000 are now in shelters, and officials estimate housing and caring for migrants will cost city taxpayers $12 billion by 2025. Business owner Joe Germanato says one of those shelters is impacting his neighborhood.
They're hanging out on the sidewalks.
There's trash. We found hypodermic needles. It's become a real nuisance.
Mayor Adams argues a major step to solve this crisis would be allowing migrants to get work permits.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Army Shakil 5858. I am Amir Budna.